Hello, everybody. This is Gary Matheny again. Welcome to episode 7 on our series relating to freedom on the inside and freedom on the outside. We did an introductory episode, episode 1, to talk about both aspects, freedom on the inside and freedom on the outside. On freedom in the inside basically means how to be freed up inside so that you can enjoy your life and be in a position to make choices that help and benefit you. And what we used as a statement for that was the gospel of Jesus Christ is the power of God to change lives. And so we did an episode on the gospel of Jesus Christ. We did one on the power of God, and we did one on change lives. And so that was episode 1 was the introductory episode. 2, 3, and 4 is the episode about changing on the inside. And now we're on 5, 6, and 7. We're on episode 7 specifically. And it's relating to freedom on the outside, which is a quote attributed to Sam Adams, who was the older or elder cousin of President John Adams. And it's a letter that's attributed that he wrote his daughters. It basically summarizes most or all or what I agree or think about freedom on the outside. And it basically said our best opportunity for happiness is liberty. So we did an episode 5, which would have been on opportunity. Episode 6 would have been happiness. And episode 7 is today, liberty. And so our best opportunity for happiness is liberty. And so what we're going to do, we're going to talk more about liberty today. And basically, we're going to use different sources. We're going to use sources from the founders of our country, of what liberty was to them. We're going to use more philosophical or secular sources as it relates to liberty. And we're also going to use some biblical passages as it relates to Bible concepts of liberty. And then we're going to talk about some of the modern concepts of liberty. But first of all, let me say that according to the Oxford Dictionary, they've given 2 definitions, and they're close together as it relates to liberty. One is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. So it is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions. And then the second one, similarly, is individuals should enjoy the liberty to pursue their own interests and preferences. The power or scope to act as one pleases. The power or scope to act as one pleases. And so what we're really seeing in modern concepts of liberty are merging together a different flavoring associated with liberty that may have been previously slightly different. And so the goal of today is to basically give you different flavors of liberty, because liberty can mean different things to different people. And so without claiming that there's one specific concept of liberty and that's it, we're going to use a broadly factored way of looking at it, with an understanding that liberty meant different things to different generations. And we're going to try and understand that a little bit further. But as a rule of thumb, I would say something like this: your liberty stops when it infringes upon the liberty of others or the rights of others. And I'll bring this up as a current event. I live in a subdivision. It has a homeowners association. and it has common property, and it has a lake. And so the debate basically is where's the common property and where's the private property, and whether people have an easement within 6 feet or so around the lake, where they can walk around the lake without infringing on people's private property. And so this is all a factual debate, and I don't know how big of a deal it is. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference to me, because I don't like to get into quibbling matters, particularly with my neighbors. But anyhow, you can see the concept here, where our liberty stops when it infringes upon the liberty of others. So we have a certain liberty within the United States to move about as we please. But that liberty ends on private property. And so when we pass into private property, conceptually, our liberty ends. But most laws, as it relates to trespassing, require some type of notice. In other words, you got to have it posted, no trespassing, to give the people notice that they are on private property. So anyhow, we have this collision, so to speak, of our mutual liberties. And our mutual liberties extend to the liberty of other people, to the rights and liberties of others. So what I want to do first today, I want to talk in the context of the fathers, because I did build this course on freedom from the outside. I used a quote from Samuel Adams, one of the founders. Now, he was older than John Adams, and he's not so prominent in the more formal founding of our country as it relates to developing documents like the Constitution or even the Declaration of Independence, but he was a formidable founding father. Some people view him as the father of the Boston Tea Party. And so he was a pretty radicalized individual, because there was a tea tax imposed upon the colonies, and a bunch of tea that had been exported by Great Britain into the United States basically wound up in the Boston Harbor, the Boston Tea Party, which it didn't directly result in the start of the Revolutionary War, but helped push the Revolutionary War closer. So let's take a look at some quotes as it relates to the founding fathers. And I may go a little bit fast here because of time considerations, but I will stop from time to time and expand upon some of the words that are given. And this is a quote from John Adams in 1765. "Liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it, derived from our Maker. But if we had not, our fathers have earned and bought it for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasure, and their blood." And so basically, John Adams is saying we have this right given to us by God to have liberty, to be free. But he also goes on to say, even if we don't, based upon our history, we have forefathers who have given of themselves, that purchased it with their very blood, with their pleasure, and with their estates. So liberty was ours. Liberty was inheritance that the founding fathers viewed that they had, either from the Almighty or from history. Another one from James Wilson, 1790. "Without liberty, law loses its nature and its name and becomes oppression. Without law," you can read boundaries, "without boundaries to our liberty," but he says without law, "liberty also loses its nature and its name and becomes licentiousness." That's a long word there, licentiousness. Good luck with that one, right? And so anyhow, the law creates boundaries, and boundaries can be good depending upon where they're set. And like I said earlier, is that our our liberty should end when they infringe upon the liberty of others. That's a general proposition. And so basically, Wilson understood the need for law and not for anarchy. There had to be law that set forth certain boundaries as to where our liberty began and where it ended. Okay, now let's move to James Madison, 1792. In Europe, charters of liberty have been granted by power. America has set the example, the charters of liberty, the charters of power granted by liberty. And see, juxtapose the words, the charters of liberty being granted by power, where in America, the charters of power granted by liberty. They flipped it. This revolution in the practice of the world may, with an honest praise, be pronounced the most triumphant epoch of its history and the most consoling presage of its happiness. And so basically, James Madison and the other founding fathers understood that they were facing a momentous time in history. Basically, they understood that power emanated from the people, not from a ruling class, where traditionally, in Europe particular, they had to get the king to sign on to the Magna Carta. And so it was power emanating from the ruling authority. In America, during the Revolutionary period, the concept was that power was derived from the people. And let's go on further now, and we'll quote Thomas Jefferson in 1791. I consider the foundation of the Constitution is laid on this ground, that all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. So that's quoting the 10th Amendment, which is in the Bill of Rights. To take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specially drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power, not longer susceptible to any definition. And so it's kind of like once power becomes unleashed, it's kind of like it's hard to gather back. You know, one old saying is sometimes you try and close the barn door after the animals are out. It doesn't really work. And so basically, once unlimited power, or power for the sake of power, greedy power, boundless power, once it escapes on the scene, you can't thereafter bring it in. Now, you can bring it in. You can bring it in most often by blood. And I'm not advocating in any sense of the word a bloody revolution. But I do believe that we need to understand liberty in a little bit fuller sense so that we can try and corral the unlimited power that our government seeks. Where does it end? Where does it begin? All we know is that, according to Thomas Jefferson, that you enter into a boundless field of power, not susceptible to any definition. And so Thomas Jefferson saying, good luck with that. And then let's go on again to James Madison from 1787. The general government is not to be charged with the whole power of making and administrating laws. Its jurisdiction is limited to certain enumerated objects which concern all the members of the republic, by which are not to be attained by separate provisions of any. And so you have enumerated powers. You got the judiciary, you got the executive, you got the legislative. And so everybody has their realm. It's the way it was set up in a constitutional sense, a check and balance. Another one, James Madison, 1788. It will not be denied that power is of an encroaching nature and that it ought to be effectually restrained from the passing the limits assigned to it. Thomas Jefferson, 1787. I am not a friend to a very energetic government. It is always oppressive. Like Thomas Jefferson, he spoke in absolutes. In other words, basically, an energetic government is not a friendly one, and ultimately, an energetic government is an oppressive one. So think about that as we energize our government with more and more powers. All right, so let's talk about Thomas Jefferson again. 1785. An elective despotism was not the government we fought for, but one in which the powers of government should be so divided and balanced among the several bodies of magistracy as that no one could transcend their legal limits without being effectually checked and restrained by the others. Again, a balance of power that they're advocating. James Madison, 1788. The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. And so the collectivization of power by one or perhaps all of these branches of government can be a real issue as it accumulates more and more power. Power seeks power. So let me just summarize for a minute the view of our founding fathers on the issue of liberty. And what I think that they were espousing was a liberty that encapsulates virtue, that it was a virtuous value in and of itself, liberty, and it encompassed the aspect of distrust for authority. And so what liberty needed to do was curb power. The role of liberty was to curb power. In other words, liberty had a proactive type of part to play in the founding of the United States of America, our country. And so let's move ahead to more of a philosophical, perhaps a secular look at liberty. And I'm going to give you some quotes here in that regard. And all these concepts, all these views as it relates to liberty have a certain crossover, so it's hard to specifically categorize a quote into one camp or another. Some are more easily than others. I'm just trying to give a flavor of the concept of liberty as from these different disciplines that we have that have commented and philosophized on liberty. And some of these philosophers, I'm not going to use their name because, frankly, they have a lot of them are from somewhere else than the state of Missouri and have very long names. For instance, Dostoevsky. There is nothing more alluring to man than freedom of conscience, but neither is there anything more agony. And boy, there is so much truth packed into that. Freedom of conscience, but neither is there anything more agonizing. If you want to put yourself on a difficult journey in life, even if you never travel extensively, we're not talking about a physical, geographical type of journey, but we're talking about the journey of the mind, the free thinking, the person that thinks for themselves. According to Dostoevsky, it's very alluring to have our own mind. It is. But it's also very agonizing because every once in a while you'll be swimming against the stream. And guess what? You may be doing that the majority of the time because you don't think within the box, you think for yourself. Furthermore, Solzhenitsyn, let us put it generally. If a regime is immoral, its subjects are free from all obligations to it. So that's a revolutionary thought. If you have an immoral government, then there's no obligation as for the people to obey it. And so it's similar to certain concepts as it relates to the Protestant Reformation and divine right of kings. Do we obey the king? And where does it stop and where does it end? And eventually there evolved this concept, pre-revolutionary, pre-1776, that there was no duty for the people to obey a tyrant. And that's powerful because it ran in conflict with the divine right of kings. So anyhow, now we'll move on, and we're basically going to quote now from James Madison again, one of the founders, 1784. The religion then of every man must be left to the conviction and conscience of every man. It is the duty of every man to render to the Creator such homage and such only as he believes to be acceptable to him. And see, you can see where Madison ventured into the realm of freedom of conscience. And so it wasn't like the founding fathers were ignorant of the freedom of consciousness. They understood it. And Madison was basically saying, you can either seek God or not seek God. And if you determine to obey or seek or honor God, you do it to the dictates of your conscience. Liberty allows for that. Now we'll go on to Alexis de Tocqueville. He was French touring America. Under the absolute sway of an individual despot, the body was attacked in order to subdue the soul. And the skull escaped the blows which were directed against it and rose superior to the attempt. But such is not the course adopted by tyranny in democratic republics. There the body is left free and the soul is enslaved. So this is very, very packed with information. It reminds me of the Nazis' rise to power in Germany. You sometimes say, how can all these good people who weren't Nazis allow the Nazis to take the reins of government? It just doesn't make any sense. But what happens is that the bullies bully everybody and they're intimidated into doing nothing. You wind up minding your own business and trying to survive according to your own terms. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but what happens, first of all, is a bullying of the bodies. In other words, sometimes physical violence against people. And then a whole other group of people are intimidated by that violence into submission, into quietude. In other words, they go along to get along. This is where the independent-minded person is so important to a society, because where you may have a huge number of people that say, I'm just trying to earn a living, I'm just trying to raise my family, I'm just trying to get a good education, I'm just trying ABC, fill in the blank. An independent-minded person will have the strength of character to say, hold on a second, this isn't right. And in the advent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, there weren't enough people who were speaking out against the Nazis. If they would have had more people speaking out against the Nazis, then the whole outcome of Germany's World War II disgrace may have been completely averted. But we can't change history. But hopefully we can learn from history. So let's take a couple of quotes from Aristotle. We'll get into the ancients philosopher here. And here's a couple of quotes that he has. It is a mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And so that's a quality associated with the independent mind. That basically you can hear what people are saying, but then you sift through it yourself to see whether you believe it or not. Now, I'm not saying being argumentative or be strident, but you're listening and you're internalizing and you're entertaining the thought without necessarily accepting it. Another one from Aristotle, he who has overcome his fears will truly be free. Well, that's a mouthful. Through discipline comes freedom. And so the ancient philosophers believed that there was actually a system, a discipline, that a disciplined life could lead to independent thought and freedom. It was something to be earned. And that's where it runs contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ, because the gospel of Jesus Christ basically says it's the free gift of God, and that liberty can spring up from the hearts of the believer as a love, as a quality that is enduring and endearing for a believer to lead their life. And so let's go now to the biblical concept of liberty, and I'm going to tell you what my favorite scripture is on that. It's Psalm 31:8, and reading from the NIV version, "You have not given me into the hands of the enemy, but have set my feet in a spacious place." So we have a spacious place, a place where there's room. And I'm just going to summarize some of the other versions without giving you the exact translation, biblical reference in that translation. So we have others: a safe place, a broad place, my feet in the open, a large place, a wide place, a large place, a large place, a large place, a large place, a broad place, spacious place, large place, feet in an expanse, wide place, set me free, spacious place, large place, move freely, go where I wish, sturdy place, broad place, feet in the open space, place, broad place, large room, large place. So, I'm hitting this same point on all these various Bible versions or translations that God has put us in a large place. There's freedom. There is freedom. And so let me cite you a few other biblical verses to support this concept of freedom. And so basically, the concept of the biblical version of freedom and liberty is slightly different than what we've discerned from the founders and what we discern from secular philosophers. In the secular philosophers, it's a freedom of conscience to think as you will. In the Bible, it's tied, though not always. It's tied to the concept of deliverance, or to be set free. And an example of that, of course, would be the people of Israel who are set free from Egypt, their enslavement in Egypt for over 400 years, the parting of the Red Sea, and they're delivered into freedom from Egypt. Now, in the New Covenant sense, of course, this is very simplified. We're delivered, we're set free from the highway to hell to the highway of heaven. So in the biblical sense, liberty is generally associated with deliverance, being set free, put in one direction as opposed to another direction. I'll give you some scriptures that support this, and I apologize for running a little long today, but I'll try and bring it to a conclusion pretty quickly here. But I want to share some verses with you. John 8, verse 31. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, "If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Luke 4, starting with verse 18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery to the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. 2 Corinthians 3, starting verse 18. But even to this day, then Moses has read, a veil lies on their heart. Nevertheless, when one turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Galatians 5:1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Exodus 6. This is verses 5 through 8, and I'm going to paraphrase here. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their bondage, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgments. Exodus 12, starting verse 40. It came to pass that all the armies of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy 16, verse 3. That you may remember the day in which you came out of the land of the Egypt all the days of your life. And that's relating to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Isaiah 61, starting with verse 1. To proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. John 8, 35 and 36. A slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if a son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Romans 6, 17 and 18. And having been set free for sin, you become slaves of righteousness. You're taken from one path and put on another. Romans 18, for the law, 8:2, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ, Jesus made me free from the law of sin and death. Galatians 5, 13 through 18. For you, brethren, have been called to liberty, only do not use liberty as an opportunity of flesh, but through love serve one another. James 1, 25. But he who looks in the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, it is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This one will be blessed in what he does. He's looking at the perfect law of liberty. So I can go on and on in the Bible about being set free and being delivered, which is part and parcel of the concept of liberty. So in summary, we have this concept historically of liberty. One, found in the founders of our country, where liberty and virtue are linked together, and it's coupled with a distrust for authority. You use liberty to curb power. The more secular or philosophical sense, it's freedom of conscience to think as you will. And some people may say that's classical liberalism, not modern liberalism, but classical liberalism, which allowed for freedom of thought for everybody. And the third is the biblical version, where liberty is conjoined with this concept of deliverance or being set free or put on from one path to another path. And so as we bring these concepts of liberty together, we can develop a certain flavor, a certain understanding about liberty. But the most important thing about liberty is to esteem it. One of the things that I've said about liberty, that is, it is a pearl of great value. It is such important to the happiness of people that we underestimate it because we can't really see it. And if you've seen, it's sometimes difficult to be understood. And yet, this pearl of great price is invaluable, and we should esteem it and achieve freedom to where we are free and have the liberty to do as we choose, so long as it does not infringe upon the liberty of others. Thank you very much.